the Grey Hat Beard podcast.
Welcome to Grey Hat Beard show number 16, and today we have a special guest. We have Peter Rising with us, and we're going to be talking in the second half around security certifications, what they are, what they cover, what the benefits are, and how to study them. But as always, we will start with news and maybe some introductions. I'm not very good at this first time doing this. Not as good as Kevin, obviously, who is on holiday today.
Not as easy stepping in Kev's shoes.
No. So my name's Alan Erdley. I'm a solution architect at CPS. I am Hat of Grey Hat Beard and an MVP in Office Apps and Services.
So I'm Garry, solutions architect at CPS, Microsoft Office Development MVP and member of the PMP team. And I am Beard, although it's a bit warm, so it's disappeared a bit. We have Peter coming up, who is redressing the balance on both sides, I think.
And so we have Peter. Peter, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep, hello all, my name is Peter Rising. I'm a senior technical consultant working for Softcat. I'm also a recent author, having published my first book, which is Microsoft 365 Security Administration MS500 Exam Guide.
Excellent, and we'll get on to the book later on. Writing a book, that's daunting. That scares me, the prospect of writing a book. So, yeah, it's
an interesting journey for sure. No doubt.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it was a very unexpected one as well.
Isn't that where you just take yourself off to a log cabin and, typewriter and throw in the paper behind you? No?
that would be the ideal scenario, but for me, I mean, as I was writing this, it took me from sort of August last year, 2019, to about April this year to write it. And it was pre-COVID, obviously, and I was traveling up and down the country going to customers. So the book got written everywhere. It was written on trains, in hotel rooms, at home, on my sofa, at my in-laws' house, on their dining table. I was told off for typing too loud in that situation. Apparently, I'm a loud, heavy typist. So, but yeah, it literally got written all over the country between August 2019 and April of this year.
Wow, well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is quite a feat. So, Garry, should we start with you? What's caught your eye over the last couple of weeks?
So I guess a couple of bits of news in kind of development side, both around Microsoft Teams. The team development kind of team are looking at how to make it easier to develop apps and publish apps to your tenant catalog. So there's now some tools in Visual Studio Code that you can use, extensions to make that easier. So deploy direct from VS Code. And they've basically introduced this new submissions API as well in Teams to help that help that process of taking your app and then getting it out there for people in your organizations to use. The second bit of news is around developing custom tabs in Microsoft Teams. So there's always been a bit of pain where you've not been able to implement single sign-on, so users go into the tabs and then have to quickly sign in again, and obviously that's not ideal in organizations. You want people to access their information really quickly, so there's been improvements in that space to really streamline that single sign-on story really. So yeah, those are two bits of news. Myself, I've been heading Azure DevOps for the last couple of weeks really. So I've been working on kind of getting the Kanban boards working for showing flow and all that kind of stuff. So I've been heading that, which has been really interesting. But
it'd be very interesting to get that single sign-on with the Teams tabs, because I know, having worked with clients over the last couple of weeks around the whole provisioning process for Teams, certainly that's one of the challenges that we're seeing is if you want to have that full provisioning of Teams, you want to be able to say, actually, we've got Teams tabs in there, even if they're, for some of the scenarios I've been working with, connecting to the to stream channels, being able to actually make sure you've got all of that logic in there to provision those tabs so that there's less work for those owners. certainly in education, which I've been working in recently, that's a massive task when you're provisioning 3,000 teams for classes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be quite a significant improvement, wouldn't it?
I mean, these kind of things, they're always good for, it's just removing that friction, isn't it? As an end user, why do I have to sign in? I'm already signed into Office 365. I don't get it. It's an extra step I've got to go through. And if you keep going into that app numerous times a day, it's the same repetition that you have to kind of go through. So I think it's, it helps with that user experience, which is good. That's obviously been seen and they've rolled that out. To basically improve, extensibility of teams. I think we're seeing a bit of a maturity rise now. We've talked about this before about, the whole COVID kind of situation and everyone going to remote working and maybe not being ready for Teams, but having to use it. And then, people starting to see, well, actually now I've been using it for a few months. What are the things that we can actually do? And, can we create our own tabs and things like that? So I think it's probably, that's sped the release of these features up, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, and as I say, I've been doing a lot with education. So there's a few updates that have come out. Being July and August, there are lots of updates rolling out, certainly around Teams, to make sure that basically September, where most schools and universities are going to have at least a hybrid approach to delivering education, if not an online only. As you say, the institution I'm working with, they moved everything online. They are a creative university, so it's not exactly easy for them, but now it's, well, how do you manage it? How do you structure it? How do you do it properly? And it opens up so many questions as to how they combine different tools, how they make it clear as to where you go for different purposes. And it really does, it does make them think about what they actually need to deliver education, because Teams is fantastic in the education sense, but it's got so many crossovers with other tools that they're using as well. So certainly there's more updates to Teams coming out just in the education space. I love the picture of together for a class of kids. I think that just makes it really, really it illustrates how much better it is to actually be able to see the body language, whether people are paying attention. And I think that's, for a teacher, that's massively important. So that was certainly one. The other one that really caught my eye on this was the ability to manage the classrooms with muting students and having a student lobby. And this is one that I've had feedback that if you send a link to a student, they pass it on to their friends, and then they have all sorts of people joining a lecture rather than just those who are supposed to be in that lecture. Which, yeah, students, this part of it starts with students have a way of finding the loopholes. Absolutely. You can have a mischievous audience to deal with. Students in education is going to be your top example. So that was quite interesting to see what they're actually pulling out.
Yeah, I'm looking through this as you kind of talking about it, and there's a few things that are really kind of popping out of that. By the close of 2020, Teams meetings will grow to support 1,000 students, and the introduction of virtual breakout rooms as well. Yeah. Which I know we're talking about the educational space, but I'm looking at these things as great for not maybe the 1,000 people in a meeting. That's actually quite daunting, I think. But the virtual breakout rooms for running workshops and things.
Workshops and seminars. And I think when you think about that limit to 1,000, if you're thinking about the structure of a university and saying you've got a department, you've got a course, and you want to have a course meeting, that's maybe a guest lecturer, having 1,000 people really makes it useful, because you can then book that meeting in that team, ideally in that channel, and get all of that integration with Stream directly. So yeah, there's a lot of neat features that are coming through, and as you say, they're not just for education. A lot of these are, like the breakout rooms, will be coming to mainstream Teams, but education is driving a lot of them.
Yeah, the breakout rooms definitely caught my eye too, as one of the recent features to come to Teams. And as somebody who runs a lot of workshops for customers in the pre-COVID world, changing to delivering workshops in using Teams exclusively in the past few months has been quite challenging. It's delivering consultancy, doing the actual implementation. That's not so much of a problem remotely, but getting that sort of bouncing off personalities and getting a feel for people, it's really better face to face from a workshop point of view. So anything that can be added into Teams to like the breakout rooms and other newer features that they're rolling out all the time will certainly help that experience become a little bit more cohesive, I would think.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we've been hiring at CPS and we've been hiring graduates, so we've been running graduate assessment centres, and it's really interesting when you want to have individuals that you can drop in and see how they're doing on an activity. Breakout rooms would have been absolutely perfect for that, to be able to go in, interact with teams of students who are actually doing activities.
Yep.
Yeah, I think as well it's the difficulty of trying to keep people engaged now on virtual workshops. Previously, like you said, pre-COVID, you might go, right, I can run a 3-hour workshop and I can have people in the same room, and people would be able to handle that. I think. Whereas now it's like, because we're doing things virtually, you've got more distractions. You're actually, using video and audio, and the audio's different to when you're speaking face to face. That, I think we've talked about this in the past about how that can have an impact on your ability to really, concentrate for longer periods of time. Anyway, so we're having to break things up and be a lot more modular in the way that we do these workshops. So, that having these things, it keeps that engagement, I think, rather than, we're all going to be sat in the same meeting for 3 hours.
Absolutely.
That is dull.
No, we're all finding new ways of working, aren't we, in these challenging times? We're all having to adapt and change as we go.
Yeah. I think the other thing that caught my eye, I think you pointed this out to me, Garry, is the lookbook, the SharePoint lookbook, and being able to actually have the SharePoint lookbook for Teams, and being able to, not for Teams, for SharePoint, but teachers to be able to actually add the lookbook onto their particular class site. And I thought that was quite interesting, because I know when you pointed it out to me, I was kind of like, well, I don't know how that's going to work, because you need to have to be a tenant admin to create a new site. And the way it turns out is that you can actually just be the site owner and apply the lookbook over the top of an existing site, which is really quite a fundamental change for how the lookbook has been working up till now.
Yeah, that's always been a request. So the SharePoint lookbook has, like you say, always needed admin access, because it's going and it's creating the sites for you. So it obviously needs that administrative those admin permissions. And I think it's always been that ask that, well, hang on, this is really useful for people just to, yes, I own a site, I just want to apply that site design. And do it just on the site that's already there. So that's always been asked. It's interesting they've done that now, because, like you say, it enables the teachers to do that for themselves. They don't have to go and bug administrators, because it's just using their permissions. So we might start to see this then, start to creep into the other templates that we've got that are non-educational related. But I do like it how the lookbook and the provisioning engine there is, it's starting to creep into other areas now.
It is. And the interesting part is it says, just use it with Teams. Embed this as a tab in Teams, so that you've got that landing page, which I think is, it's really starting to gel really nicely.
I really love the SharePoint lookbook, I've got to say. I've used it quite a lot. I think what it's done is it's made it easy to do a professional and modern intranet that pretty much anyone can do almost instantly. And what was harder to do in the old classic team site experience, and quite often you needed to end up going towards an intranet in a box solution. You can now do in minutes and have something that looks really sleek and professional. So I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I know, it's really good. So what's caught your eye, Peter? What have you been working on?
Well, for the past sort of 3 or so weeks, I've been working on a very, very complex tenant-to-tenant migration for a customer, predominantly for SharePoint. Everything, the whole thing, SharePoint, Mail, Teams, the whole thing, and it was a very, very complex migration. So it produced quite a few challenges. We ended up having to use multiple migration tools to get everything that needed to go across, because there's really sort of no one tool fits all, if you like. Some of them will just migrate the documents across. Others do a lot more, like ShareGate, being the industry leader, for example. They're the top name and the top price tag, shall we say. That will bring across things like content and structure, and elements of look and feel as well, and things like lists and events calendars that some of the more basic migration and less costly migration tools don't do. So that's been quite a challenge. We've been working steadily on that in our team. So that's been where my focus has been the last 2 or 3 weeks. As a result, I've perhaps not been as on top of the news as I usually would, but I've always got one eye on these, on what's coming out and what's new and exciting. And it all seems to have been very Teams related. And a couple of things that really sort of stood out for me this week was one that Microsoft have sort of done an about turn on the 120 minutes of voice, which was going to be included free in the M365 E5 plans. We talked a little bit about this before we came on air, and said this was probably another covert effect, that it was something that they give to you to sort of entice you in. And it's really an example of how Teams has been the real winner of COVID, isn't it? In that anyone who was a bit skeptical of Teams or in general cloud averse has had the decision taken out of their hands. They have to, by and large, have Teams now. And we found that with our customers, the ones that we'd been knocking on their door for years were cloud averse, were suddenly our new best friends, and like, how quickly can you get Teams up for us? So yeah, I think it's an effect of we'll give you this to get you on board, and as things are settling down a bit now, we're noticing a few things being taken away again.
And I think it'll be interesting, actually, because certainly some of the Power Apps that they released, for the crisis management stuff, there were push notifications were free for 6 months. I wonder how vocal they will be about when those services start to be charged for, and they start to pull back. Because I mean, as you say, I'm working with a client, and they put things in because they moved, and they're now looking at, well, what's the actual license costs?
Exactly.
Because they had to, and now they're really starting to work through the costing of those services that they needed, and to work around that license cost now that they have to pay for things.
Yeah, you have to give a lot of thought as to what you really do need. It's great when you get a free trial. I mean, I did it myself in the early sort of weeks and months of COVID, in order to sort of keep my own family communicating. We set up regular family meetings, and I signed up on my own lab tenant for a full kitchen sink thrown at it M365 E5, so and assigned the licenses. So they've all died now, so we're not doing those meetings anymore. I'm certainly not going to pay that out of my own pocket. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's an E5 license isn't cheap.
No, it really isn't. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, but you've got to get your hand in your pocket. Yeah, definitely. But the other thing that caught my eye was the changes and updates to the whiteboard, the Microsoft whiteboard, which is a thing in itself, but it's also very, as is everything it seems at the moment, very integrated into Teams. Teams being sort of the central hub of everything, where everyone goes to work from. But they've added some new features into that, and it's got some sticky notes and text, and hopefully some improved performance. Admittedly, I've not had a huge chance to take more than a passing look at it so far. It's definitely something I'll be looking more at as I sort of get into my much needed week's holiday now. I say a holiday, but it'll be a busman's holiday, because I can never put these things down. I'll be looking at all these sort of things and just driving my wife mad that I'm not switching off enough. So, but
I'm looking forward to exactly the same thing. Looking at Dataflex on my holiday. Yeah.
Of course, yes. There's so much stuff that has come out lately from Inspire that is just on my list to look at. Dataflex being one of them. At some point, if I have 2 minutes spare, I need to learn GitHub. That's been on my list for ages. It's just there's always something new.
We have an expert in our midst for GitHub.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think coming back to the whiteboard piece, it complements those breakout rooms as well. And certainly, if the performance improves significantly, then it's a massive tool change in terms of how you interact with people, how you do ideation, design thinking, all of those types of activities for actually extracting information from people and managing that information, distilling it down. I mean,
Definitely.
The thing that I've missed the most for COVID is I've got a box downstairs that's got pens and post-it notes in it.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been able to go out on site with any clients and actually do any workshops. I've got post-it notes sat next to me, and that's I live by post-it notes, and whiteboard is one of those tools that a digital whiteboard with post-its and the ability to draw, and it's invaluable.
Oh, it's going to help so much for things like workshops, without a doubt. I know I'll be using it without a doubt on the workshops that we deliver to our customers. Absolutely. It's funny because it's recreating old physical things like post-it notes that from the old world, the old way of working alike. But even techies like us, even people who live and breathe this, we still sort of gravitate to more traditional methods at times of writing things down, and it's a hard habit to break, isn't it? But this enables you to do that in a digital way, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been doing quite a bit in Azure DevOps recently, and really kind of delving into the Kanban boards, and it's the same kind of thing, isn't it? It's you're not drawing on things, but you've got those blocks, and it's easy to visualize, easy to understand, and know where you are with these cards, and get that high level view of what's going on. So I really like that. It was really interesting when this announcement came out, because they've actually done a bit of a rebuild on this. So you've always had the whiteboard web app, but it was really limited. And I think obviously again they've identified that to try and go, okay, well, let's make the web version a lot better, bring that into Teams. You've still got the full whiteboard app in Windows or on iPad as well for extra features, but it's just making the whiteboard a lot more accessible, I think, to more people by improving that kind of base level. So that's good. That's always a good thing.
Yeah, and there's definitely interest in this. I mean, I've had one or two customers asking me about this and how it works and how it compares to some third-party whiteboard solutions that they're currently using. So it'll definitely be a big feature.
Yeah, and I think some of those third-party solutions are pretty impressive as well. So it is one of those things that I can see, Microsoft really focusing on this, because it's a productivity tool that they really have to have in the suite for Teams.
Absolutely. But the other one last thing, actually, if you don't mind, is I've been, as has everyone, I think, been looking at Microsoft Lists, and I'm maybe a little bit late to the party due to the busyness that I've had at work over the past few weeks. But got Lists in my tenant through a sort of a backdoor sort of trick by redoing the OneDrive.aspx URL and started having a bit of play with it. And I came up with a little idea, which I've done one blog post on already, which is to try and do sort of share my experience of discovering lists almost unplanned, sort of doing it and sharing it as I'm doing it. So I've gone and created a list and made a list of my James Bond films is what I've worked on. So, which is another one of my passions. I love the Bond movies. So I think that could be an interesting way of doing it and sharing me learning as I go, lists unplanned. But I'm really impressed with what I see so far. It's looking really good.
I think lists. So I've been up to my eyes in client work, and I haven't played with lists properly yet, and mostly because I know as soon as I start, that'll be it. I've got to just consume hours and hours of time. But I think that where lists sit going forward, it's going to be really interesting because with Dataflex coming in and how that works with teams, I know Garry and I have both been working on sort of meeting management, and lists could be really useful for that. Replacing the conditional formatting and the tooling that we've had in the SharePoint lists with the big brother of Microsoft lists. I think it's some enticing opportunities there for clients who are looking at managing those processes. As you say, sharing information, finding it, making it more visually enticing and easier to interact with. I mean, those are the things we've been doing for years with SharePoint lists, trying to make them better. But taking them out and putting them into Microsoft lists, I think will be some intriguing opportunities.
Absolutely, and like everything else, it's coming into Teams as well, which is amazing. So you can just work from the same place. And
there'll be a mobile app as well, won't there? So
yes,
so absolutely. A dedicated mobile app, which I think will make it that will really transform how people interact with it.
Definitely. But no, I'm looking forward to exploring much more of that in the weeks and months ahead. I think it's going to be a really big feature.
Yeah.
Nothing's ever going to be as big as Teams itself. It's just, but of all the recent sort of new features, it's the one that I'm probably most excited about in recent times.
It's interesting, isn't it? Pretty much everything that we've been talking about is how you extend Teams, add things into Teams. It's everything that we're doing is focused around how we make Teams even more versatile than it already is.
Absolutely right, yeah.
Excellent. So with that, should we bring this half to a halt, and we will be back.
Before we do that, we should mention 2 events that are coming up.
We should. See, I'm not as good at this as Kevin is, am I?
Well, I mean, I can go because the first event's what I'm involved in. So on the 1st of September, we have the very first Patterns and Practices virtual conference, so PMP. So I'm speaking there about keyless authentication using managed identity, and there's a whole day conference going off with 2 tracks. So check out the conference site. So it's aka.ms/PMP virtual conference. Register on there. Registration obviously is free, and you'll see all of the sessions on there from pretty much everyone in the PMP team and Microsoft bods as well, who are also involved.
And the other big one coming up in October is Teams Fest. And Peter, you're speaking at that, aren't you?
I am, yes. I'll be doing a talk on hands-on data loss prevention and retention. So, which is a subject close to my heart, being the security-focused person that I am. So, no, very happy to be speaking at my first Teams Fest. I was very, very honoured to have my talk accepted, and not only that, I've got the pleasure of moderating the entire security and compliance track for the day. So really looking forward to the event and talking to lots of good people and sharing a lot of good information about security and compliance.
Excellent. So I think one of the sessions that you'll be moderating will be a session that I submitted around entitlements, which is now Kevin and I doing entitlements. So we're tag teaming entitlement, so it's a step up from access reviews, but really great way to share permissions for things, manage it, full lifecycle management of permissions. So really looking forward to that, because that's an underused capability, massively underused in my view.
Absolutely.
And that'll be a good one. First time, so I don't know how that demo gods will start
cross your fingers and toes.
Making sacrifices to the demo gods now, because that's a demo heavy session.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely record it.
Definitely. Yeah, we might have to record it up front, because there's lots of moving parts and people involved in that. So
sounds like a plan. Yeah. Well, the other thing is Ignite, of course. Ignite.
Of course, yeah.
Two-day virtual event now, isn't it? Which I think it was just announced yesterday that you can register from 3rd of September, I believe.
Yeah, and it's in September, isn't it? Was it 22nd?
Yeah, 22nd to the 24th. Yeah, I did not know that, so that is something that I've learned this morning. Great. I should be registering for that.
Registering now, booking out your time to get the focus on it, rather than having to do the client work at the same time.
Oh yeah, that is just, it's not even possible. There's so many sessions that go on daily, and you're looking at Twitter and there's a session on. I've actually got to get some work done. To have that in the corner it's just too much of a distraction. You can't consume it then, and you just get frustrated, I think.
Exactly. I tried doing that for Inspire, and it just didn't work. I mean, for Teams Fest, I've actually taken the entire week off in that October week, so that'll be nice. Yeah. So you have to have that time to dedicate to it.
Yeah.
I think certainly with Ignite, the number of sessions, the breadth of subject area, it's just so much to cram into your head that, it will be a challenge to actually focus on all of that content.
Absolutely. It's going to be different, isn't it? But because it was going to be in New Orleans, which would have been amazing with big changes.
Maybe next year, hey.
Yeah, you never know.
I think it'll be interesting to see how they're actually going to run the conference again, because it's been really good watching Microsoft do their different big conferences, and they've always changed things up. They've always gone, okay, we've tried this and this worked, and for I think the business apps conference as well, they had the whole studio, and they had people's tweets in there and everything, and made it into like a rather than it's just here's a collection of sessions that you can go to. It felt like a proper conference. Felt like a real event. So I really like the way that Microsoft have done that, the way that they've really adapted to taking conferences online, and using the benefits that you get from doing that as well.
Yeah, and I think that it'll be very interesting, the scale of Ignite, because it's always been the biggest conference they do. The number of people that you can get into a live event, book early. That's all I'm going to say.
Exactly.
Register for those sessions as soon as you can.
Yeah. So what is it now? It's 20,000 now, isn't it? Is that right?
For live events, I think they increased it recently. Yeah.
Yeah, 10,000. It went up to 20, I think, and probably will come back down at some point. But or may not. But
scale it up for Ignite and scale it back afterwards.
That's it. Yeah, I mean the scale of Ignite, obviously, Al, you went last year, didn't you? Mm-hmm. And I think you'll be glad that you don't have to do a lot of walking this year.
Do you know what? That's my annual exercise. No,
I've never been to the real Ignite. I've only been to the one in the Excel in London, which obviously is now a hospital. But I hear that the scale it makes the Excel just look tiny.
Oh, absolutely. Excel is minute in comparison to what they do.
Wow.
Yeah. It's an experience. It really is an experience. And being online, it's not. Yeah, you're not going to have the same amount of exercise. But it was tens of thousands of steps a day.
Just get a treadmill.
On that note, excellent. So let's bring this to an end, and we will jump on in a second and do the second half.
Cool.